Good evening, baseball fans. It is Monday, February 5th, and this is podcast 3. This is episode 3 that we've done today. So I don't actually know what number episode it is in the whole line of things, but it is episode 3 that we have done for you today because Kelsey and I, we grind. That's what we do here on Bourbon and Baseball. So if you don't already know, I'm Suzy. That is Kelsey. This is Bourbon and Baseball. And tonight we have a very, very special guest for you tonight. Kelsey, would you like to take it away and introduce our lovely guest?
I would. Thank you so much. We are fortunate enough to be joined by Justin Havens. You might know him as JayHay from Baseball is Dead, but Justin is a sports and social media producer, researcher, and podcaster who started his career as a researcher and producer with ESPN. He then took his producing talents to Barstool Sports before landing as social media marketing and managing editor for Major League Baseball. You, of course, know him today as co-host on Baseball is Dead, where he stays rooted in his passion for baseball statistics and growing the love of the game. So thank you for joining us tonight, Justin. How's it going?
Thank you very much for the intro. It's going great. I'm looking forward to this.
Good.
Well,
We also are looking forward to it, but I totally forgot because, this is episode 3 that we've done today, to give you guys the warning. This is a rated R podcast. Rated R podcast for all of the adult content. Not that kind of adult content. Unfortunately, we don't get paid for that. So just all of the adult language, because that's what we do here on Bourbon and Baseball. So if expletives are not your thing, you should probably not listen to this and or watch. That's not the thing for you. So if there's tiny ears listening, probably put some earmuffs on them, but I'm not going to judge. That's you do you, boo. So with that said, away we go.
Justin, I'm not sure where you grew up and were born in. I didn't creep on you that hard, but I did see that you went to the University of Illinois, which is in Champaign, Illinois, and I grew up in the Peoria, Illinois area. So we're both very familiar with that thrilling part of the world. But let's start kind of back there where you earned a degree in English and literature, because I was interested to see that, considering where you are today and how that kind of all may or may not run together. So how did you ultimately find your path into sports and baseball research?
Yeah, so I did graduate from the University of Illinois with a degree in English, English and literature, minor in history. It was that I found my way to baseball research was mostly good fortune. So I started working for a series of weekly newspapers in the same area of Connecticut that ESPN is located in.
Okay.
After I'd already interviewed at ESPN for their research department, so I was working just I mean, if you're familiar at all with the Connecticut area, it was just in the general Hartford area covering high school, JV, and varsity sports. And then ESPN called and said, do you want to come work in the research department? And in order to get into the ESPN research department, you have to take a sports, I don't know if you still do, but you had to at the time have to take a sports knowledge test that was timed. I vividly remember where I was, how I felt at the time that I sat down to take that test, because you could, at the time at least, I'm sure it's changed, but at the time you could use the internet to research answers. But if you took time to do that, you had absolutely no shot of finishing the test.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just kind of like you were self-canceling on the result. So
Wow.
Yeah, it was a real experience, and I was fortunate enough to do. They didn't tell you exactly what you got, but good enough to get to the next level, and then flew out to interview at ESPN, and then I think it was a comical amount of time, just a crazy amount of time later, they called to offer the job, and I obviously accepted very quickly and started out in the research department. And so the fact that I graduated with a degree in English and then ended up at ESPN in the research department was like kind of a joke, really.
Sure.
Other than the broad base of, and I'm not being totally dismissive, other than the, it gives you a broad base of skills, I think, to have an English degree or a literature degree. And obviously get a lot of that, get a lot out of it in my current life and what I like to do in my free time. But as it relates to where I am now, it's like almost totally unrelated.
So did you just had a vast array of knowledge of all of the sports for
Yeah,
ESPN? Are we like
I was just kind of a sports geek growing up. Like I played sports, but like none at a tremendously high level, and certainly none past high school.
Oh, okay. So you weren't an athlete like Jared was.
No, I think
Okay.
I think Jared and I were very similar athletes. I think much closer than the descriptions might otherwise indicate. But no, I wasn't tremendous, but I was very interested. And it really wasn't until college that baseball sort of re-separated itself in my mind as to like this is something that could like maybe not be a career at the time, but like I became like interested all over again with like I started reading the Bill James baseball abstract stuff, his rankings of players over the history by position, which was just like right up my alley. I was like, oh, this is great. Like somebody's put a quantitative like number or ranking on like all of these players I've read about and want to read more about. So like, let's dig in on this. And Rob Nyer and like all the original baseball prospectus people who have all disseminated and gone to do various things. But it was a very exciting time to like get back into baseball with some of the new sabermetric and viewpoints that were being kind of like embraced or at least like acknowledged throughout the game. So I'm not of that capability. Like I just don't have the programming skills or the modeling skills necessary to do that sort of work, but I can certainly appreciate it. And so, yeah, but as far as the ESPN specifically, it was, I got in with a broad base of sports knowledge. And then once you get in, if you're interested, you can pursue like specific sports paths. Like, as you guys probably know, like ESPN has NFL specific shows and NBA specific shows, and not so much anymore, but had baseball specific shows and Baseball
Right.
Tonight. So when I was there, Baseball Tonight was a 7-day a week, like 1 to 3 times per day sort of show, kind of wall to wall at night. And so it was a really fun time to work on the show. But I eventually made my way over to just baseball for the most part, at least during the season. And then I did that for the vast majority of the time that I was at ESPN.
Wow, that sounds slightly hectic, but also like it would be a lot of fun.
Oh, it was
but
great.
but only in a
No,
certain time frame of life, I feel like.
yeah, I mean, live sports obviously necessitates that you're working at a certain period of time during the day, seasonal, not like in
Right.
terms of necessarily employment, but just like, there are 6 to 8 month stretches where it's a pretty heavy emphasis on what you're doing at work. It absolutely coincided with when it was best in my life to do that kind of stuff, and I got to travel for all the tentpole events for Major League Baseball, All-Star Game, World Series, winter meetings, spring training, all the good stuff. And, I have memories that, I legitimately treasure and, relationships and stuff like that. But it would be hard to replicate. I'm not like necessarily an old person, but, it'd be different now than it was, 10 years ago or whenever I was doing it or was in
That's
the heart
okay.
of it. But
Kelsey and I are both old, so we're right there with you. Right there with you.
yeah,
So it actually goes into our really next question. What was your transition like from TV into the digital content world that we're all kind of in now?
Yeah, it was kind of not necessarily forced, but I just sort of jumped into it because at ESPN, it was primarily either research or then when I was a producer, like linear TV focused. And then when I went to Barstool, obviously it was there was nothing linear about it, and so that was like I mean, I guess technically that was the first digital show I'd ever produced, was the show with Dallas and Jared and Brian Wilson, which was, you know, I've talked about it before, but for me that's like the most like hidden gem, like underrated before its time, like product from the baseball environment, because like I just remember sitting in, you know, what they were calling a control room, and just like having tears in my eyes and how funny the three of them were together. And it was a moment in time, and we lost video rights, and I'm not sure Brian Wilson and, you know, was ever going to stick around for a multi-year stretch of time, hindsight, all that
Right.
sort of stuff. But that was the first digital show that I'd ever done. So it was an interesting transition. Like, I think if I'm being honest, I think I immediately missed, you know, the live environment that goes with live TV. And that's tough to replicate in like a closet control room when you're doing a digital show that is streaming, yes,
Right.
on Twitter and Facebook at the time, but like, you know, it's not quite the same. So like the adrenaline rush was a little bit of a come down. But in terms of like what I've done since, it's been pretty smooth. It's almost like I can't remember a time before these mediums existed. And it's kind of weird. It feels weird in hindsight that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when I was literally first beginning, 15 years ago or 10 years ago, when I was, you know, in my late 20s, like working on Baseball Tonight, it was that a lot of this stuff wasn't happening in a more robust manner. Feels strange in hindsight. Not that I was suggesting it should have been necessarily, but it just feels natural at this point, I guess. Not necessarily the being on camera stuff. Like, I'm doing that a lot more in the Baseball is Dead era than I did previously. Like in my role of starting nine, and you know, bouncing on and off the mic in that role. But you know, it's been fun. I really enjoyed the 2023 season, and you know, I'm looking forward to more stuff in 2024, and hopefully we get to do, you know, like some more in-person stunts and stuff like that.
Well, you, one of the things that I'm really excited to talk to you about, or just interested to talk to you about, I guess, is Suzy is a photographer. I'm an actor. We are like creative people, and that's obviously what brought us to this space as well. But you strike me, at least from what I've, you know, heard you talk about, you like structure, analytics, research, you prioritize being prepared, all that kind of stuff. And that is me. It's why I struggle as an artist sometimes. So I'm interested to know a little bit more about how you manage yourself in this world, in this industry that is not only constantly evolving, but doesn't offer a lot of stability. So really, whatever you're willing to share, from just your expectations of your career to the finances to the just day-to-day of like turning it on and off. How do you make it work?
Yeah, so I guess in reverse, like the day-to-day stuff, like I've always really loved, I guess since I've had a taste of both, ultimately, I've loved the idea of working like kind of heads down, full bore for like 75% of the year or 70% of the year, and then having a 30, you know, a chunk of the year where it's like, okay, if I reach this point, then I'm not shutting it down, but like it does slow down considerably, or it's a shift. I'm doing other things, whatever it might be. Like that to me is it's entirely personal. That to me is a helpful setup to get through a given year or a given cycle or whatever it is, and to, you know, to set natural goals for myself or whatever project I'm working on throughout the season. So I've had a wide variety of experiences within media and within baseball, but I'm also siloed in the fact that like 90% of my like real professional working career has come during, like, has followed the cadence of a Major League Baseball season.
Sure.
So, or at least a sports season. So, like, yes, it's what I prefer, but also, like, you know, maybe chicken or egg sort of deal, I guess. But I guess that's how I would start answering your question, is that I do like that. I like that rhythm. So that part makes it easier for me. Um, in terms of goals and like career stuff, I'm like deeply uncomfortable answering like career. Not that you asked for like career, or you are asking, or like, or even for the audience, or asking for career advice necessarily, but like, in my opinion, like, so much of the successful things that have happened in my life or my career, my professional career, have been like, you know, fractions away from being, from not happening, or from being failures, or, and then like the areas where I've been super disappointed about how things have played out, I feel like it cuts the same way almost, where it's like, if I'd been like a beat sooner on that, or if I'd like, what, it could have played out totally differently. So, like, other than like the real basic stuff of, if you're going to talk about something, I feel like you should be informed on the topic, and that you should like treat people with respect in like the professional and personal environment. Like that's kind of how I manage my career, and that's for better or worse. Like, there's certainly been ebbs and flows as far as my life has gone, and where it's going. But, and then finances, like, media is obviously tough. It's been tougher. Like, it didn't feel this dire in a lot of ways when I started out. I like the news. Like, I started, like, I'm so like, it's moving so quickly that the beginning of my career, like, newspapers were still a place where you could like start out and be like, that's that's where I interned after college. Like, when I was just like, when I was just taking like individual assignments basically, and going out and getting paid per article. It's what I took my first job in Connecticut. As I said, I moved across the country to get paid at the time. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I think it was $20,500 for a full-time job, working at the newspaper, which is like, I found it to be about as little as you can possibly make and live on your own. At least in 2008 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And, but I'm fortunate enough to have received good financial advice in my youth from many parts of my family, because there's a lot of people who are much more financially savvy, not even rich, but just like much more financially savvy or employed in that industry than I am. And, my current status allows some level of freedom, given that my spouse is also very successful in, I shouldn't say also very successful, is successful in the media producing world. So, I have a lot of good bounces that are in my favor, but certainly, I think, I think that's my answer.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to ask, like, how did you get from point A to point B? But that's an impossible question to answer for most people. And like, you couldn't.
I mean,
draw
how did I
it on the
get?
map.
How did I get from a series of weekly newspapers to ESPN? I clicked on the ESPN website, and they said work here, and I said that sounds cool, and I
Okay.
clicked it, and I applied for a position, and then out of dozens of people, I got lucky and was able to get a position in their research department, where, like, if you had replaced me with someone else who applied or who was a finalist, ESPN would have been fine, and that person's life would have been different as mine would have been. So it's just like, how did I get from point A to point B? Like, I don't know, like, kind of like a ping ping pong ball,
Yeah.
like, bounce it around.
Right.
Like, it's like, it's whatever.
Yeah, I think, and maybe this is something that has changed with the times, or sometimes I'm like, is it the time, or is it me? Is it my age in this time? And maybe it's a little bit of both, but growing up, it was so easy to look at people who were doing what you wanted to do and try to follow their path. And in some professions, maybe that is still the case, but in professions like yours, it just isn't, and it never really was. So it's interesting to, kind of just hear everybody's path, because everyone's a little bit different.
Well, it also certainly feels like there, for better or worse, there are more paths, right, that you can go
Right.
to, like, or the funnels, or they may not all lead to like tremendously successful places, but there are more funnels that you can take and paths to pursue. So I think, and anybody can flip on a mic and start recording a podcast. Like I record podcasts with my fantasy buddies all the time, and it's like it gets distributed to like 12 people, and it's a great time. We all have a good time, but it's like, so, but I also view that as practice in a lot of ways, because
Yeah.
I'm getting
Right.
better for what I do semi-professionally too. So it's it is a very difficult thing, but at the end of the day, you have to just like do it, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I love the segments on Baseball's Dead when you like go back and do the, should this person have won MVP that year?
Oh,
And
thank you.
I only became a fan of baseball in 2018. So when you and Jared talk about like the Barstool days, I don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about, because I only found you in Baseball's Dead era. And so basically anytime you talk about the MVPs from yesteryear, I'm super intrigued, because I had no idea. I had no idea that person was actually very good or very bad in some cases. So how long do those segments take you to kind of research?
It's funny you say like you started listening in X year, or your baseball, like intense baseball awareness goes back X year, like X number of years, because sometimes I get inside my own head with those sorts of things, and that segment in particular, because I'm like, is this obvious? Like, is this something that I should be including in this segment? And like, your comments confirm that like I should not be assuming anything about the 1978 NL MVP. You know what I mean? Like for for 99.8% of our listeners, and the people who it is repetitive for can like, eat rocks or whatever. It's just like, we'll deal with that percentage of the people. But those I'll answer it two ways. Like I do genuine research for that segment. It's not just like a
Mhm.
throwaway. Like I am taking it very seriously, and I sit down and I do the work for it. It doesn't take me that long to do, just because it's basically what I've been doing for like 10 to 15 years. Like some of it paid, some of it not. Like sometimes I just do it for fun. Sometimes it's like part of a job, but like it took me longer at the beginning because I didn't necessarily know like what points I wanted to hit, or like what the things I wanted to emphasize every single time. But once I got a little bit of a template and was like, here are the things I want to look for each time, and then here's the percentage of stuff that I'm just going to kind of like take me wherever. And I just hop on StatHead on Baseball Reference and I start searching things, and it's like, even if it's just a super random collection of numbers, like for whoever we're talking about is superlative in some way. They were in the MVP
Right.
conversation. So there's something cool to say about all of these guys, even if some of it is like backhanded because you're saying that we should take your MVP away. But yeah, no, that's a lot of fun. It's like I'm glad Jared suggested it. It's a perfect, in my opinion, kind of off-season segment. Like we haven't even done, I don't know what percentage of the MVPs of all time we've done. Well, let's say we've done, 10% of all of the MVPs so far. I'm already looking forward to doing the Cy Youngs, because there are just as many stupid Cy Youngs all time. But it also helps me because it's like, I've gone through most of this stuff before, but not necessarily in this format or for this purpose. And it's nice to kind of like re-research some of this stuff and be like, oh yeah, this is Pujols' third MVP. Like this was the last one he would ever win, etc. Like we did this week. But I'm glad you enjoy it, and it is fun to do. I enjoy doing it.
Oh yeah, no. Looking back at all of the the history of like the big games and whatnot, my mind was actually blown when I found out that Nelson Cruz actually played in the fields. Because in my head, Nelson Cruz is a DH, and at no point in time should be in any sort of outfield capacity.
By the way, since you brought that up, like that is probably the craziest night of work that I've ever had in my life was game 6 of the 2011 World Series. Obviously, Rangers.
Were you there?
Cardinals. I was there.
Oh.
I was the vast majority of the game.
It.
I was in the production truck, and I was in that was the first World Series that I got to go and be the on-site researcher for Baseball Tonight, and like whatever. Nobody's going to like cry any tears for me, but like the setup is such where, just to like take you inside here briefly, the setup is such where you have a little laptop on what is like a little like fold up cart table at best, maybe sometimes like a box, right? You're typing on a box. And it is like, we're talking, the weather almost invariably is extremely cold in most of these spots at this point in the season.
Yeah.
And that was the case in St. Louis too, because that's where we were not in Texas. And so that's like, and you're on the stage, like off to the side, off camera from where the talent are going to be, and you're typing, and every single, like, you're trying to build as many graphics and create as many like interesting contextual notes and tidbits as you possibly can about what the outcome looks like it's going to be, or the events that are happening in the game. So if you can imagine in game 6, it looks like one thing, and then something happens, and then it looks like it's going to be the hero is this guy, and then it's not. Then it's Josh Hamilton. It's like, holy shit, Josh Hamilton just hit one of the biggest hits in World Series history, and then actually it's going to be David fucking Freese who's the hero, and it's just like you're changing everything back and forth, and it's like, and sometimes it's just like, well, I just spent 15 minutes doing that. That gets thrown directly in the trash because nobody gives a fuck about like what, that fucking Josh Hamilton hit really anymore. Like, we'll get to that like 2 hours in maybe, or something like that. But so, and obviously it was a confluence of it being my first season, and that game being like absolute bananas, and the working environment being, and that's not unique to Baseball Tonight or anything. That's just like what researching on the road for a live studio or a live show is. But it was awesome. And I'll never forget it. And like, I might have even been pulling for the Rangers like a little bit at the time. I don't really remember why. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But like, I go back and I listen to Joe Buck's call about it, like, the semi-tribute to Jack or whatever. And, the free, like, just watching the ball go out and like all the sequences. And I just go back and I'm like, man, that was, still get chills watching it. That was a magical game.
And you were a part of it. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a Cardinals fan. So as soon as you said 2011 World Series, I'm like, this is what I'm here for. We're still living for it.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was just a fantastic World Series too. Obviously game 6 was the peak, but that was really good stuff.
Yeah. After watching that, I was like, so is David Freese like a badass? And I just don't know.
Like, so is David a legend in St. Louis or something? I've never heard of it. I'm like, yeah, let me tell you.
I mean, about as good as it gets for like, baseball being kind of like a magical sport or whatever. Like, just, I mean, it, in terms of World Series MVPs,
right?
You don't get more. You don't get a lot more generic in terms of their overall career contributions than David Freese among World Series MVPs, right? It's not even a knock. It's like actually super cool. And like the World Series MVPs in history who are like, that dude made like David Freese made one All-Star team. Just kind of, I don't know. It's cool when that happens.
That's the trajectory that Jeremy Pena is going to be on. I mean, we just love Jeremy Pena's biceps. That's what we love.
Oh,
Jeremy Pena.
Okay. Factor that in. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't get me wrong. I do love me some Jeremy Pena, but hit a freaking slider, man. Hit a freaking slider. Anyway, so yeah, I was like, does David Freese just get all of the free drinks in St. Louis and only in St. Louis? Like when he's like, hey, I'm David Freese and nowhere else? Because I don't know, but it was super interesting to me to find out that David Freese was not actually a superstar baseball player. I'm like, but he did all the things in the World Series. Like, what do you mean? And
I love
like, let me tell you something, Suzy.
I love those guys who do crazy stuff at like the like outset of your baseball awareness, whenever that happens to be, at whatever age it is for any individual person. And it's like, well, that was like the fourth name that I knew when I started paying attention to baseball. And you're telling me 5 years later that person kind of sucked, like wasn't really part of the fabric, like it was. I don't know. Like we all have those people. I have those people from my youth, where it's like, I had like 18 of their baseball cards, and I go back and look, and it's like, that guy washed out like 4 hours after you got those baseball cards.
Well, like I said, my baseball love started in 2018, and then overall baseball knowledge kind of started coming in like 2020. Mm-hmm. So when I found out that Madison Bumgarner was actually a badass, my mind was blown, because my version of Madison Bumgarner had like a 5.6 ERA, and I'm all,
yeah, it's tough.
What do you mean to tell me that Madison Bumgarner was an actual like really good pitcher? And they're all absolutely, Suzy. I'm all, I don't believe that.
I joke about that with Pujols sometimes, or not with him. He's never been on the podcast, but about him on the podcast, where it's like there's whole generations of fans who only know him as like kind of like a very slow, unathletic, like just kind of guy who was hanging on. And it's like, yeah, and you are very clearly, by your timeline, one of those people. You missed him by quite a bit, actually. And it's just crazy because like there was a whole decade where he was the baddest motherfucker post Bonds on the planet. Mm-hmm. And like if you weren't there, you had a whole other decade to watch him, and he was very forgettable for like 95% of that, up until that pretty cool, flare at the end. But yeah, no, you're a walking example of what I've joked about. I'm not sure I've ever met or discussed Pujols with somebody who's an actual example of that. So that's, enlightening.
Oh yeah, but it's even more wild because as a Cardinals fan, like I think we almost would have been more surprised if he didn't have the season that he had in 22, just because that's the Pujols that we all knew. And, when he went to the Angels, we forgot about him and were too hurt to pay attention for a while. So it worked out really well for us, but that's a very good example.
Did work out really well for the Cardinals. Yeah.
Yeah, no, when I first started watching baseball, my husband was like, oh no, we absolutely fucking hate the Cardinals. I'm all, we do? Why do we hate the Cardinals? Like these Cardinals, like over here? And he's like, oh yeah, absolutely, Ma. Come again? Why? And he's like, for years we were in the NL, Ma. What are you saying to me right now? So he just all of the mind blowing was happening. And then there's, obviously still very hurt Astros fans with the NL and the Cardinals. I have none of that. I just hate the Yankees. That's all I hate. I'm very sorry about that. So, yeah, no, it's really funny to me when people talk to me about Cardinals stuff. I'm all, that's before baseball, Suzy. I have no frame of reference. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, so, don't bring up Brad Lidge and Albert Pujols around that era of Astros fans. It could get ugly.
Yeah, I know of what you're speaking. I've never actually seen it.
Yeah, that's Astros NL baseball. Yeah.
But that's that's the era that my husband watched and was a fan of, and so when we talk about Astros stuff now, he's like, "You don't even know, Suzy. You don't even know. You don't even appreciate what you have." Well, that's fair. But yeah,
it's been quite a long time now. I mean, at this point.
Yeah.
What was it? I had to look. 2013. So we got a full decade in the books in the AL.
Yeah. But
A lot of fans forget the NL Central era.
We just and then tanked for ever. So there's that. Like,
it's going okay.
That's okay too. Yeah. But speaking of the Astros, what do you think the chances of the Astros actually doing anything this season would be?
Oh, I mean, I think you have to like their chances entering the season. I mean, to me, we'll see how it shakes out exactly once the projections come out and all that sort of stuff, and rosters are finalized. Everybody makes their way through spring training with their various injuries. But I think the three AL West teams who competed for the division and wild cards last season are going to be the three teams that do it again. And there wasn't much separating these teams either by record or I think by talent last season. And I think that's mostly the case again. Like some team, like I think the Astros have probably gotten. I mean, they've made the most definitively impactful addition of any team in the division. I would say in the form of Josh Hader, but not to diminish, but that he is just quote unquote a relief pitcher. It's not like they added a 200 inning starting pitcher or some MVP caliber middle of the order bat. So if that's the biggest needle mover in the division, that's manageable for the other teams, I think. Given Houston's track record, I know the Rangers just won the World Series, but I think they have to be viewed as at least co-favorites in the division to start the season or to start spring training, given when we're talking. And I don't think
I don't know about a co-favorite.
Now she
You
wants
think outright you think you should be outright favorites over the World Series champions? That's your opinion?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
In your heart.
All right.
In my heart.
That's a real fan talking.
Don't be a homer.
I mean, I think that's going to be. I think the projections will end up falling within a couple of games of each other. So you could argue either way. I don't think I could go passionately in either direction. I think what I'm comfortable saying is that the Mariners have the best starting rotation on paper of the three teams, and I think they have the worst offense of the three teams. So where that all shakes out, and I think they've made a lot of changes to their team, but how impactful are the guys that they've brought in? Like, I think Jorge Polanco, as we discussed on Baseball is Dead today, like I think Jorge Polanco is a good pickup, but like the other guys that they've added are kind of like coin flips as to whether they're going to be good or available or like upgrades on what they had before.
Right.
Whereas Josh Hader is at least a definitive upgrade and sets them up to have like a really, really fearsome 1-2-3 punch at the back end of that bullpen. How the rest of it shakes out, we'll see. But that's a great place to start, is having your three most important relievers be really awesome.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess the answer is I think they will be viewed as very serious AL West contenders, and I think very serious World Series contenders coming out of the AL until proven otherwise. I mean, there's nothing about last season suggested that they can't win the World Series in a given year moving forward, to me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, absolutely. Dusty Baker is standing right there in our way. So
Not anymore.
This is true. But I feel like last season we could have had a shot as well, but he wasn't managed as well as you would hope. So hopefully Joe Espada will take the reins and do what we think he will actually do and use his players properly, a la putting Evan Carter in with Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy is my favorite. So hurts to say.
That's a tough legacy to leave here on Bourbon and Baseball for Dusty Baker, World Series champion Dusty Baker.
Yeah.
No. I still maintain that
she's
that
looking
20
to point that finger of blame at somebody, and he's the target.
Okay. We've decided it's him.
Well, no, not all him, but there's a hefty portion of it. There's a hefty portion of it. Yeah, that will rely on him. So
what's your I know you're asking most of the questions. What's your patience level here with Espada? Like, what's your game sample that you're willing to allow him before questions start to be asked?
I'm willing to give him the entire season because we
Okay.
obviously
Well, that's very patient.
we gave Dusty full run of all of the things. So
This team runs itself too. It'll be fine.
hence why Dusty Baker got a ring in 2022.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly although to be fair, that's in my estimation applicable to like a good chunk of managers who end up winning World Series. I remember hearing Curt Schilling talk about Bob Brenly and his contributions to the Arizona Diamondbacks 2001 World Series championship, and let's just say whether they could have had a cardboard cutout of Bob Brenly, and it sounds like they could have won the World Series. So it varies. It varies.
That's fair. That's fair. But sitting here like Rangers fans, cover your ears because I'm gonna say nice things about you, and it hurts my soul. But watching Bruce Bochy literally have faith in Evan Carter, giving him full reign and being like, all right, Rook, let's go. I know that I got Travis Jankowski over here that's been doing it for me, but you know what, Evan Carter, let's go. You've shown me what to do. Here you are. And then like moving him up in the batting order, like within the whole I'm sorry, is Evan Carter batting cleanup in the World Series in his rookie season? Oh, that's lovely. Okay.
I admittedly did not come prepared to discuss the nuances of Dusty Baker's 2023 managerial track record. So, with that caveat, however,
I'm very disappointed.
From a macro perspective, I think if we're doing the comparison to Bruce Bochy, which is a really high bar, right? Not many people have won 4 World Series titles, very few as a manager. But if we're going to do that comparison, I think we also need to remember the context in which Dusty Baker took the job as Astros manager at the time. And that was basically to bail them the out, right? Like that was I'm going to come in as a trusted, like good face to put on this very ugly problem. And he did that like as well as anybody could have
tremendously.
And that they won a World Series over his tenure, to me, still has to be viewed, even if he was, I'm not going to argue whether he was a net gain or a net positive for the team, but that they won a World Series during his tenure, to me, it has to be viewed as a success then.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I just wish that he would have taken 2022 and ridden off into the sunset and gone to his vineyard and enjoyed it all. That's what I really wish.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I bet he also regrets that decision.
He does. Apparently the bloggers and the tweeters were too much.
Yeah, he was talking about you.
And yes. Well, I'm not a blogger though, just the tweeters. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're nice on Twitter, you said. So you don't talk nasty.
For the most part.
Okay. While we're talking about regrets, I got to get some Cardinals talk in here because we can regret nothing more than how the 2023 season played out. And coming into the season, I think the thing that we as fans are all most concerned about now is like we didn't see it. The writing it was there on the wall, but we didn't see it. So my question for you is, how much better do you think that the Cardinals are on paper at this point than they were last year, and how do you think that might play out on the field in 2024? Can we hope for anything better?
So I was like, as I recall, I think I was last man off of the Cardinals disaster last season on Baseball is Dead. Like I just kept saying like this division stinks. Like, that I think at various points, like the Reds and Pirates were winning the division. It's like, come on. The Cardinals are going to turn it around in time, and like they're going to kind of jog to 87 wins, and it's they'll win the division or whatever. Obviously that never happened. They finished last. Just a total disaster of a season. So with the understanding that I also misread and did not see their 2023 disaster coming, like at least they have attempted to address some of the very serious problems that plagued the 23 version of the team. Obviously, I mean, we don't. I won't break down everything because I'm sure as Cardinals fans, I'm sure you guys have talked about it. But like, or as a Cardinals fan, I'm sure you guys have talked about it. But like, obviously, turning over 60% of your starting rotation and investing pretty heavily in one of those guys, and Sonny Gray, who was a Cy Young contender last season and a deserving Cy Young contender last season. That's big. And given some of the dollars that were tossed around, like to me, Sonny Gray's, if you're worried about how much is my team committing to X players, whatever, like I think the outlay for Sonny Gray to me felt like a really solid deal, both probably for Sonny Gray and for the Cardinals, but specifically for the Cardinals in this case. So they addressed that to some degree. Like they're going to presumably get bulk out of Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson to varying degrees of quality, but like that will probably represent an upgrade on what they got last season. Like I was looking in advance of the podcast, and they were, you can look at lots of different metrics, but by almost all of the metrics, they were like a bottom 5, bottom 6 starting rotation last season. I believe Fangraphs had them as one of 6 teams with a 5+ ERA out of their rotation. Their bullpen was maybe didn't get the headline disaster credit that the starting rotation did, but it was also not a net positive for the team last season. So, and maybe the additions to the bullpen came later in the offseason and aren't quite as headline grabbing as bringing back Lance Lynn and signing Kyle Gibson and Sonny Gray. But like, they added Kittredge and Middleton, and I know they have some level of hope for, the Ryan Fernandez ad and Jojo Romero. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that like I can give you a lot of insight on the chances of Ryan Fernandez sticking in the Cardinals bullpen, but Middleton and Kittredge seem like real answers to problems that plagued them last season. And I know that like, Katie Wu made the point on The Athletic that like the Cardinals were very vocal about saying that we want more swing and miss in our bullpen because because there was not enough of that in 23, and Middleton specifically definitely speaks to that and addresses that given what he did in 23. So I'm going to go right back to being ready to make the mistake that I did in 23, which is believing in the Cardinals. In part, if they were in certain divisions, then I would say, well, they're not going to win. If they were in the AL West, if they were competing with the Astros, to me, or the Rangers, they would not necessarily be titles. If they were in the AL East or NL East, I wouldn't be considering, like in a lot of divisions, but they are fortunate enough to play in the NL Central. And, I know everybody anticipated the Cubs getting a lot better this offseason. I think they've gotten, they've maybe stayed in place depending on what happens with Bellinger. They're certainly beatable. The Brewers are announcing that they are taking steps back with the Corbin Burns trade, and obviously Woodruff's injury, which is not news at this point, but represents another piece of that team kind of falling by the wayside. So they're turning the page. We're witnessing a new Brewers era, and I think the Reds will be competitive. But it's right there for the Cardinals. And I think I have some my concerns on offense, specifically on some guys. And like at some point, Paul Goldschmidt's not going to be an MVP caliber hitter, right? It's got to happen at some point. I'm not going to try and predict what
we have like
it happens.
60 first basemen in the system. So it's fine. But yes, that's a good point.
And like, and more like tangibly, Nolan Arenado has shown like real slippage offensively over the last 2 seasons. Like I know he had a huge bounce back in 22, which kind of like calmed some concerns about what did we see in our first season in 21 with the Cardinals. But like his season last year was his worst offensive season. Like if we just put 2020 in the garbage, like that was his worst offensive season basically of any full-time season in his career. So yes, he's still an asset. No, he doesn't suck. Like that's not what I'm saying. But like what level of production we get from them, I'm interested to see how that is balanced out by like some of the ascendant and legitimately interesting young players that still populate this team. Like, I know it was kind of like a start and stop, and like, is he good season from Jordan Walker in a lot of ways? But like, I'm personally still very interested to see
Oh,
what that guy's bringing, because if that clicks, that's your next middle of the order hitter potentially that this team needs. Mason Wynn, I know this is like top 100 prospect season on a lot of different sites, The Athletic and ESPN. I've read those specifically. Mason Wynn's obviously front and center in those lists, and we saw in his taste last year that A, he looks ready, and B, like, he looks potentially electric in a lot of different ways, and that they've cleared out the opportunity for him to be the starter at shortstop next season. So like, there are lots of reasons to be kind of like intrigued by the lineup too. They're imperfect like all the NL Central teams, but I think when it gets time to like who are we really going to pick, I think they're probably going to end up being just as viable of an option as the Cubs.
Just what we want to hear. Just as viable as the Cubs.
Well,
you're right. And I think that's what ultimately bothers me about it, though, Justin, is that like they could make one or two more moves that would ensure that they just at least win the freaking NL Central. Like, come on. And I'm just so sick of them only playing to win the NL Central, I think that's the frustration the majority of Cardinals fans have. And maybe this is something that's always happened and I'm just noticing it more, but do you think there are a lot of teams that kind of play it maybe a little closer to the vest like that based on what other teams in their division are doing? Like, I mean, the Twins are another great example of the other Central division, like doing just enough to make sure that they stay competitive within their division. And, there's some validity to that because we know the postseason is as much of a crapshoot as it is anything. So yeah, get in. That's the most important thing. But at the end of the day, these teams that are having deep postseason runs and like you would know more about, the percentages and stuff of like the teams who actually have a shot at it when it comes right down to it. But is that something that's happening like more than usual with like maybe the disparity that we see in payrolls? Or is it just something that I'm more aware of?
No, I mean, I think there's something for sure to the idea that the changes that Major League Baseball have instituted in terms of how many teams are making the postseason,
Right.
and how the de facto salary cap is structured. Like, there are incentives in play to, I think, obviously there are always incentives in play to discourage spending in professional sports. Like, that's what the owners always are looking for, right? So that's not groundbreaking, but like, there has long been an effort to disconnect like quality of performance on the field, or how much am I spending on the roster, the on-field product, and how much money am I making like net on this Major League Baseball operation, and all of the real estate around it and all of the fun that goes on around baseball. Like, if you can disconnect that from, do I have to field a good team, then your incentive to, like, you may still be incentivized to not be the A's, but to behave like maybe the Dodgers are behaving this offseason, where it seems like they're just rampaging Major League Baseball, or to do what the Rangers, like, it's, people are focusing on the Dodgers because it's obviously the newest thing and it happened with Ohtani, but like the Dodgers, spent a lot of money on Semien and Seager primarily, but not just them, several other people too, to put a really high quality product on the field and to expedite the rebuild that was going on internally with some of the other people. Like, Evan Carter was brought up, young money, as Dallas likes to say. Like, there were important young contributors to their World Series run, or the regular season as well. But the Phillies, they've invested heavily in via free agency and in the case of Nola, bringing back guys that they developed internally. So it's not universal that teams are not behaving this way, but I think there are a lot larger percentage of what we used to consider kind of big market or big medium markets where they're just like, you know, are we really going to spend that extra 225 million? I don't know. I don't know that we're incentivized to do so anymore. And that's by design in a lot of ways. And I personally think it's bad. Like I was probably pretty shrill. Like when I used to work at MLB, I'm sure many of my coworkers found it to be quite shrill after a while. Some of my perspectives on like, what was good for baseball or whatever. But I don't think that's in the long-term interest of baseball. But, these owners are more interested in, the short and medium term prospects for that slice of their overall, financial portfolio or investment. And that's, the danger of having baseball ownership in the hands that it's largely in currently.
Right.
Well, I mean, with that said, I'm going to ask one final question and then we'll let you go,
Okay.
Justin. So, with the Orioles, changing hands, the AL East has gotten much more scary. So, how many more games do you think the Orioles will win this season? And are they now the AL East favorite?
So let me make sure I'm understanding the question. How many more games than they won last season?
Correct.
They won a lot last season.
I guess I will
I think they
answer
won
with
99 games.
they won
last season?
101. The
101,
Orioles,
okay.
the Orioles. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to say that they win fewer games than they did last season, actually, while maybe being a
Really
like qualitatively better team. So I think,
interesting.
I think, I think the Corbin Burns acquisition is about as like perfect of a trade acquisition as can exist for a team. That's probably how I would describe the Juan Soto acquisition too, because you're talking about like real acute needs on teams and they went out and solved them with probably the best single solutions that were available to those problems. And in the case of Corbin Burns, since that's the one that's relevant right now, like the price paid seemed extremely palatable given, it's a rental as of right now. Like you can pay to extend him, but you're paying for the one season in terms of what you're paying in prospects. And the depth of the Orioles system and what they gave up, like the Joey Ortiz guy that they gave up, he was like their sixth best shortstop prospect or something like that, even if he's like a very, very good shortstop prospect that's going to immediately provide potential impact for the Brewers. So I think the Orioles are probably the best team on paper in the AL to start the season with Corbin Burns. Both AL East and the AL overall. But I would not pick them to win. I probably will not pick any team other than maybe the Dodgers. I don't know what the Dodgers over under is going to be set at. It's probably going to be like pretty stupid. And I may have to avoid it. I think the Braves and the Dodgers are kind of like they are still a tier above everybody else in my mind, talent wise in Major League Baseball. But I would say that the Orioles, with the Burns acquisition, have separated themselves within the AL East and probably within the AL overall, all due respect to the Rangers, because I like there's internal growth potential with the Orioles that I think is hard to match with any other roster in baseball, both offensively and listen, like every prospect system has, Jackson Holiday is number one. They have they either have had or do currently have their overall system is like the best system in baseball. So it's like, whatever. I'm not breaking any news here, but even if we ignore the prospect rankings and focus on guys who are already on the major league roster last season, like the stuff you saw from Grayson Rodriguez over his final 10 to 12 starts last season was super, super encouraging, I think. And given his prospect pedigree and minor league performance, like kind of the stuff that you would expect to see. And if he's legit and you have Corbin Burns and all of a sudden Kyle Bradish is like your 2A, 2B, or number 3 starter, and then everything starts to make more sense. And like his season of like, is 2.9 ERA or whatever he put up is like, okay, he could regress off of that a little bit and still be like an amazingly effective number 3 starter for us. So, and then all the upside that they possess offensively with, I think we all expect another step from Gunnar Henderson, et cetera, et cetera. So like a lot of people, I'm extremely hopeful on the Orioles season. And I think they're clearly the best team in the division. But expecting anyone to win 101 games is tough sledding, particularly in the AL right now, I think.
Okay. So less games, but you think they will win the AL East over the Yankees?
Okay. Yeah. If I'm being pressed for an answer on February 5th, and I reserve the right to change this officially on Baseball is Dead, I would take the Orioles first, and I would take the Yankees second and Rays third. I think it's going to be, which would put the Blue Jays fourth, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be much the same as it was last year, where you have like 3 to 4 teams competing for the postseason legitimately for the vast majority of the season. And who falls out of those 4, I guess TBD. Like I could see it being the Rays. Like maybe this isn't the season where things work out. They're obviously going to be missing their best, their core offensive player forever. And so maybe it's the year things don't quite work out for them with the pitching injuries they suffered last year. But I'm also optimistic on the Yankees for, maybe we can talk about that on a different appearance, I guess. But I would take the Orioles. Yes.
Do you think Carlos Rodon bounces back?
I don't know that I'm ever comfortable betting on Carlos Rodon. Okay. I mean, that's a bad proposition over the course of his career to have bet on him in any given season. I think they did enough this offseason to like kind of calm some of the fears that I had about like some of the super inappropriately bad players who were getting time for them offensively last season. Like we're not going to see kind of those like total zeros, I don't think. And obviously they added Juan Soto, who's one of the 5 best offensive players in the AL now and a potential future Hall of Famer. And listen, I know Marcus Stroman is a disappointment as your primary pitching acquisition if you're a Yankees fan. Like I know they had dreams of bigger things, but he does help. If we're looking at it from the perspective of instead of is he exciting, if the question is does he help you, then the answer is unquestionably yes. And if he's on the team, that I think the expectations for like what I need out of Carlos Rodon. Do I need Carlos Rodon for this team to win the World Series? Probably yes. Do I need him to be a wild card team or to win 90 games? I don't think they do, actually. So if he can give them number 2 pitching level performance, then I think they're just as nasty as basically any team in the AL. That's a huge if. As big of an if as exists, basically.
Any sort of innings at all, Carlos Rodon, the Yankees would appreciate you. Yeah. So, well, Justin, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight and chatting about all of the things. We really appreciate you. Can you tell the people where they can find you on socials, shows, all of that fun stuff?
Yeah. Before I do that, though, can I ask you one last question?
For sure.
Because you guys were kind enough to send me questions ahead of time, and we hit almost all of them. But one of them we didn't hit that I prepared for to some degree, and I actually want to hear your opinion on it. Because it was who, if anyone from the Astros, is going to the Hall of Fame next. And I think Justin Verlander's obviously he's a lock. Yeah. But where would you set the over-under at if you had to set it at a number on Astros, the current roster, the number of people who end up in the Hall of Fame? Whether that's an Astros cap or not, just these Astros in the Hall of Fame.
2 for sure. 3 maybe, but 2 for sure.
So Verlander, I'm assuming the for sure's are Verlander and Altuve.
That's what I'd say from the outside looking in.
Okay,
Yep.
and the TBDs are, I mean,
The
obviously,
TBDs are Jordan, and if that guy behind me, Tucker,
Yep.
doesn't fall completely off, I think he has a chance. I mean, really and truly, it should have been Billy Wagner, but I won't go on my whole tirade there. But yeah, JV, Jose, Jordan, Tucker.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder. Obviously Verlander's a lock. A lot of time is going to pass before Jose Altuve's career is being litigated, and I'm interested to see how the voters treat his involvement in the scandal, because he's going to end up with a very, very compelling statistical Hall of Fame case. And what's also interesting, because like I think last season, in a lot of ways, well, I should say the last two seasons to me changed the whole trajectory of what we're talking about with Jose Altuve, because prior entering 2022, you had a player who was like, this guy kind of looks like he's in decline. Like, I know 2021 was a good season, but it was coming off like kind of a lost 2020. It was like, and it was a clear step down from his previous work. And it was like, and the last two seasons, I know last year was partial, but goddamn, when he came back from the injury list, he was one of the best offensive players in baseball, regardless of position. And what's also interesting about his Hall of Fame case, outside of the whole Astros thing, is how will the second basemen that are on the ballot currently or coming up soon be treated? Because Chase Utley was not treated very well in his first go at 28.8%. He was a guy I would stump for. And coming up next year are Dustin Pedroia and Ian Kinsler, who I think most people, when they hear those names at first blush, are like, Hall of very good. And maybe that's where they end up, and maybe that's where they belong. But they both deserve pretty extensive discussions, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff to go to their Baseball Reference page and really look at Ian Kinsler and Dustin Pedroia and look at where some of their stats rank historically among second basemen, because how they fare, I think, is going to be interesting with Altuve, because Altuve's got, I think, a peak level and hardware. I know Pedroia has an MVP too, but like, he's got, I think, overall hardware and accolades that those other people do not have. But I think he also has complications that those other people do not have. So I think it would be cool if they all ended up in there as opposed to none of them. That's the way I'd rather have it. I'd rather see all four of those second basemen in the Hall of Fame than none of them end up. But I am curious that's why I asked you, because I think the other guys are clearly TBD. Like, it's tough to say about Jordan and Tucker and that kind of stuff, but
right.
Altuve is that inflection point.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I only started watching baseball in 2018.
He's clean in my book.
Right. So when all of these like Hall of Fame arguments come up for, like this last Hall of Fame ballot, people were asking my opinion. I'm like, I'll just be really honest with you. And I only know about one of these guys and really only care about one of these guys. And that was Billy Wagner, obviously. And someone had asked me about Francisco Rodriguez and what I thought about him. And I was like, don't know. Can't tell you. I'm like, I'll do some research and I'll get back to you. And so when you say like Dustin Pedroia and Chase Utley, like I recognize the names, but I have no frame of reference on how well they played or how poorly they played. And so again, I have to do my research. But when like Jose Altuve's name comes up on the ballot, like I will have known all of the guys. Yeah. Ideally, like when they go on that ballot. And so then I can make some informed arguments for, against, all of that fun stuff. So, but looking at the Baseball Reference page for Jose Altuve, under similar batters, it's Hanley Ramirez and then Dustin Pedroia. And then Joe Mauer. Oh, excuse me, Brandon Phillips and then Joe Mauer. So, if we're gonna talk about people who are similar in ranking, then, but by and large, I do not think that Jose Altuve will get into the Hall of Fame until like the very, very end. And it will always be a wide argument for against, especially with like all of the people with the PEDs and all of that stuff, listening to those writers talk about how they talk about the PED guys, and then I'm like, well,
Yeah.
Altuve really didn't do the things, but what? That's neither here nor there. You're really not gonna listen to those arguments. So it's one of those where you're like, what personal opinion, and I think being on the team forever, I think will help him. Hopefully.
Well,
Fingers
I mean,
crossed.
I know you guys already basically did my sign off, so this is the last thing that I'll say. But
No.
it's going to be hard for me to stomach any writers who are going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame based on the scandal or like some sort of morality play or something like that. When we already have evidence that he's been welcomed back into the fold during his career, and that I know it's not it's not an apples and apples comparison of who's voting for the MVP and who votes for the Hall of Fame, but like there are writers who are actively voting for this man to receive MVP credit while he's playing baseball. Like in 21, he finished 18th, and in 22, he finished 5th in the MVP voting. So like, and had he played enough games last season, he would have been in the MVP conversation again. So that's not a rationale that I'm going to be interested in hearing. Obviously, I'm giving it away that I'm probably going to be in favor of Altuve in the Hall of Fame. But like,
I mean, I agree as someone who's not, I don't have that fandom attachment that you do, Suzy, and I completely agree. And I think that's such an interesting point of conversation that you bring up, Justin, that's one of my favorite conversations to have in regards to the Hall, is the comparison and how it all plays out over time and how that changes the trajectory of who gets into it over time. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about right now and to follow.
We'll see. We'll come on. We'll do another one hopefully sooner, but then we'll do another revisit for Altuve's induction.
Would love that.
For
sure. Yeah.
Don't grind too
hopefully
hard.
You'll come on.
Don't grind too hard between now and then. You're going to grind yourself into dust.
You didn't tell us where we can follow you.
Oh, at JayHay Kid on Twitter, JayHaykid on Twitter. That's really the only place where I do anything interesting. If you want to follow on Instagram, it's the same thing with 85 at the end. Yeah, I mean, Suzy, Kelsey, I appreciate you guys having me on the podcast. It's been fun talking with you guys.
Well, we, like I said, we appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. Thankfully, it wasn't as long as you spend with, Dallas and Jared on Baseball's Dead. So.
Wear me
rival that, but yeah, let's not try tonight.
No, we can do. We'll go for 3 hours next time we do an episode. It's funny, we do 3 hours.
Sure.
Joey can barely get a comment in. Poor guy. But no, seriously, thank you. I appreciate talking with you guys. It was fun.
Again, we appreciate you, Justin. I will put all of Justin's social links, all of the podcast links in the show description. Again, guys, we are still hanging tough on the Apple Podcast charts in Spain and in Japan and in Korea, United States. I don't know where the fuck y'all are at, but get on board because we need you. Okay, so 5 stars.
Dead, come over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. None of our podcasts are as long as Baseball is Dead. So like, I'm just saying, it's shorter episodes, guys. Shorter episodes. So
I'm ready to grow my international brand based off of what you just said.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but we're a pretty big deal in Spain and Japan and Korea. So,
I did not. I know now.
Yeah. Now you do. So, but if you guys already haven't, please hit that red subscribe button, tell all of your friends, and give us 5 stars because we like 5 stars and all of the nice words. No mean words. Because I will find you and maybe throw punch you. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how much bail money I have. But with that said, we appreciate all of you guys. And with that, we are going to sign off and hit end record. And yay, baseball. Ooh.